you look at somebody that gets 350 leads a month, they probably have 20,000 records in the DMS. So that is 20,000 people in which the average RO is $460, in which, by the way, 55% of a dealership's DMS are people who haven't been in 12 months plus. And if you think about service, I'm going to simplify it. Some groups are going to say that's not the truth. Like if you think about service, the reason they went elsewhere is not because of price. You go to the average consumer and you ask them what the price of an oil change is, the Jiffy Lube versus the dealership, they would not be able to tell you. The reason they go somewhere else is out of convenience. There's 190,000 independent repair shops in the US. There's like 36,000 franchise dealerships. So like they're already at disadvantage. So you gotta provide a better experience.
Today, I'm joined by Dessein, Vice President of Sales at Impel. Car shoppers are drowning in dealership messages, sales events, service reminders, and endless blasts that are blurring all together, and that's why Art's message on this podcast cuts through the noise. Send fewer messages and sell more cars. Sounds counterintuitive, but it's not. We also dive into the real pulse on AI in auto retail, what dealers are actually asking and where the conversation is heading. A big thank you to our sponsors for making today's episode possible, Widewhale, Experian, and of course, Impel. And now let's get into the show. Arthur Dessein on the CDG podcast. Arthur, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, Yossi. Appreciate it.
You're all traveled out, huh? NAMAD, you've been all across the coast the past couple of days.
Past couple of weeks, yeah, for a straight 2 weeks. So hopefully I got enough energy to get through this 30, 40 minutes.
How efficient are you in the conferences? Like, how do you handle that?
I'm pretty efficient. I mean, I got a good process in place. Yeah, from checking in, getting all the suits and shirts pressed, and making it on time, and flights. One thing you can't control are flights, but thankfully, actually, interesting story. My first time ever I missed a flight on the way to NAMAD was because the flight, the airline's called Breeze. It's kind of a new airline. I don't know if you've ever flown it. But it does like direct flights from secondary, tertiary cities, but they left 30 minutes early. Early. And I get to the airport exactly at the same time, which is 10 minutes before my boarding starts. That's how I get to the airport.
Yeah.
And by the time I got to the gate, no flight even on the jet bridge. So I'm thinking I'm too early, but apparently I decided to leave 30 minutes early because they get rewarded by landing early at the secondary airport.
So they're like, we'll leave Art behind. He doesn't need to come on the flight.
Let's leave to Delta, but didn't miss any part of NAMAD, so it was good.
That's incredible. Have you figured out how to travel with a suit without it getting wrinkled? Have you figured that out?
Yeah. I mean, no, not really. I mean, unless you like hang your jacket, right? And sometimes like they won't let you hang it and stuff like that. But hopefully you can wear the suit, after you land and not necessarily on the plane. I try not to wear a suit on the plane because you never know. Planes sometimes are like 90 degrees or you're in like the middle seat. You just never know.
Well, dude, you're when I thought about this podcast, it reminded me of my friend. I have a friend that calls me like a human RSS feed for the auto industry. And I sort of see people in your positions, right? So you lead revenue at Impel, right? Leading AI company in auto retail. But when I think about someone in your shoes, I think about someone who is interacting with lots and lots of dealers face to face on a daily basis, which to me is you're a form of a signal. I mean, you have the pulse on the market, and that's what I want to dig into here, because I think there's a lot of discussion on AI in our industry. We cover it a lot, and we're talking about what's changing, what's working, what's not working. What are people embracing, yada yada, and that's what I want to lean into. And so, I want to just jump right in first to start with. Give us a overview of, from your perspective, the state of AI within dealerships. You can tell us a little bit about what Impel is doing, which I'm sure most people listening have, heard of Impel, but I want to understand, what is Impel working on, and how is that working within dealerships today?
Yeah. So I'll give you a distilled version of not only my perspective, but our perspective, which is, like 7-8 years ago, 9 years ago, there was a couple of AI players, not generative AI, but certainly AI players that were in automotive. I think a lot of dealerships got burned. I think a lot of dealerships realized it wasn't true AI. I mean, it was AI, but in a different way that people now expect AI to be, which is, these large language models and this agentic AI. But so I think a lot of them had this bad taste in their mouth. And similar, in automotive, there seems to be every 2 to 3 years an acronym that everybody latches onto. So you remember digital retailing, nobody really
I
talks.
love that acronym. My favorite.
CDP kind of had that. Like now you still are kind of seeing a lot of groups trying to push into establishing a CDP, but that's kind of like this kind of thing. And AI had that. So now I think now we're at this kind of period, this threshold where there's some groups that think AI is this kind of fad, this kind of acronym. It's overblown. We think that actually they're probably undervaluing the power of AI. I mean, if you look at even the publicly traded companies, right? NVIDIA is worth $4.5 trillion or something like that. OpenAI just raised funds at $500 billion. So like this technology is really, really helping like these big Fortune 500 organizations. Probably not as much as one would think. It does have some huge implications in terms of operational efficiencies and making people a lot more efficient. But we now are seeing kind of this shift in dealership groups actually seeing, you know what? I actually do need AI. And not only for communication, but also for data management, processing, synthesizing, and also like predicting next steps, predicting behavior. And so we're now seeing probably over the course of the last 5.5 months, a lot more dealership groups leaning a lot more heavily. So we saw this kind of 5-6 years ago, AI was burnt. Then about 2 years ago, there was a lot of momentum with NVIDIA in the stock market and ChatGPT coming out. And then it waned, we thought, like about a year and a half ago for like 6 months. And now it's picking up steam again. And mainly driven by these kind of agentic AI applications.
Okay, why are dealers asking you for AI? Is it just because their competitors using some product, or is there a problem they're trying to solve? Like, what does that mean to dealers?
Yeah, I mean, the most like superficial view is that you hear it all the time. So of course you got to ask for it. Right? You can't turn on a news channel without hearing about it. I think.
Okay, so
is,
there's a cohort of dealers who just like hear AI and I need AI.
You need it, right? Like you don't want like FOMO, right? You don't want to miss. You don't want to miss.
Yeah, FOMO. You don't want to fall behind. Which that I would assume that's at least some cohort of people. So that makes sense. That's human nature.
Yeah, it's like saying, why'd you invest? You ask people, why'd you invest in Bitcoin? Most of it's like, well, you just saw a lot of news cycles on it, so I invested. I don't want to vote. I mean, that's the same. It's a parallel, right? It's the same. They don't really know why. They don't actually know the underlying reason why they did it. But then there's another cohort, which is like they're looking at their operations, and there's a ton of deficiencies and inefficiencies, both in variable and fixed. And a lot of it is driven by like human error and human issues. Like the scale in which, like, even if you look at the number of leads they get or number of records they have in the DMS for service, it's a gargantuan amount, and it's really hard for them to do stuff without automation in place, or at least be a lot more successful. So there's a lot more dealerships now trying to do a lot more with less. And, Gen AI and agentic AI applications are meant to do just that, right? Like extract all the efficiencies you possibly can extract and do things that even if you hired 5,000 people, you couldn't do.
Okay, those dealers that are looking for specific applications, are they looking to become more efficient? Are they looking to replace talent and employees? What are they looking for? What are they asking you for?
Yeah, so I think there's a cohort that's looking for, hey, we need to do more with less. There's some that are like, hey, we got to sell more cars, or we have to service more cars, but we can't take the additional expenditures that it might take to hire like we used to. Right? It's pretty costly. And the output of that human labor is like diminishing returns, right? Like even like think about if you had 1,000 leads, if you had 500 BDC agents or 100 BDC agents handling those leads, you're probably not getting the same value for the additional 400 BDC agents. There's also this timidity around like saying, yes, like, can it replace people? And so there's two sets of thought. There's two mindsets, which is no, people are safe. It's just going to make them better. I have a different perspective. I think, yeah, it should certainly replace people, right? If it's doing like, and look at how far it's come and the evolution of it just in the last 2 years and what it was able to do. Like ChatGPT, when it was released, was great. You could plug in something, you get an output. Now you can go in and say, use ChatGPT, for instance, use the agentic AI capabilities, and it can actually book reservations, book flights for you. You can set it to connect with Gmail or Excel, and it can actually execute on tasks. So of course it's going to replace people, but there's also this fallacy called the lump of labor fallacy, which they think like technology will come in and completely eradicate that position in which the person will be left out of a job. That's not really the case. A lot of dealership groups will repurpose that person as something that he's much better suited for. So think about a BDC agent may not be great, but maybe that dealership lacks in having true like a labor around equity mining, right? Somebody doing specific equity mining outreach. or maybe somebody can spend a lot more time being a lot more personalized or having a lot more information service to deliver a great experience and not be behind a computer doing tasks just for the sake of doing tasks. That's kind of our vision. Is we think there's dealers that want it for operational efficiencies. We think there's dealers that want it to kind of do more with less. And then we think that dealers are just trying to potentially, use AI to cut SG&A.
Are you seeing, or which one are you seeing more of? Are you seeing, G&A, or where are you seeing the most demand ultimately and impact?
Yeah, right now I think it's still more towards, hey, we need to drive more efficiencies. Right, and you look at the variable side, right? I'll pick on the variable side and then we'll go to fixed. But even on the variable side, think about the introduction of BDCs. So BDCs were introduced, which is essentially an additional layer of people who almost interfere between the dealership personnel, the sales rep, and the customer, because most BDCs hand it off to the sales rep. So now there's this additional layer that the consumer's got to talk to before he can purchase a car. But like the closing rates aren't any necessarily higher, right? They're almost the same. So you've introduced this huge call center, and the customer has to talk to yet another person before he can buy the car, but the outcome is the same for the dealership. And so there's a lot of groups that are still looking at using AI to reduce some of the overhead that they have, especially on the variable side. On the fixed side, there's a lot more focus on the customer experience. Like when you look at service, they don't have BDCs that are overstaffed, right? They can barely keep up with the inbound phone calls that are coming in, much less doing the outbound work that's necessary to try to retain a client. So I think on the service side, more of them are leaning towards using AI to do personalized outreach that's actually effective to compete with the independent repair shops, which is really who they're competing with. They're not necessarily competing with the dealerships. And on the variable side, they're competing with the other dealership down the street.
This episode is brought to you by Widewell, making reputation management effortless. If you've tried things like bonuses or QR codes to get more reviews at your dealership and still feel stuck, you're not alone. These tactics often fall flat, but that's where Widewell comes in. Their platform automates the review process by integrating directly with your DMS. No manual follow-up needed, and every review is handled by their expert US-based response team, so each review gets a custom response in less than 24 hours. Want real insights instead of guesswork? With voice of the customer analytics, Widewell uses AI to turn raw customer feedback into clear operational insights, so you know exactly what to fix and where to focus. And here's a special offer just for CDG listeners. Get 3 months of review response services free when you purchase the Widewell platform. That's 3 months free. So go to widewell.com/CDG to book a demo. That's WIDEWAIL.com/CDG, or click the link in the show notes below.
So very specific question, Arthur. If you were today to acquire a dealership and you had to implement your first AI tool, what would you implement? Like, what's that first thing you go to bring added value immediately?
Easy. Service. Service is probably the single largest opportunity for a dealership, and it's easier. Like, think about the amount of energy, time, money, people they throw at variable, right? Like most of the GMs come from the variable side, so they're of course they're over-indexing on variable. But so if you think on the variable side, like, you spend a lot of money to just sell the car once, right? And the person comes in, they give you, so say you own a dealership, Yossi, and I come in and I give you $70,000 for a Jeep Cherokee now these days, right? And I drive away. If I trusted in giving you $70,000, like you're losing me as a customer for service if you can't retain me. And if you look at the number of records in the DMS, it's about 60 times greater. So the number of customer records in the DMS is 60 times greater than the number of internet leads they get. But the mind share allocated to service is like 10%. So they're spending like 90% of their energy on variable, 10% on fixed. And so we think AI is like perfect for service, because the problem with service is the scale of outreach that's needed isn't doable by people, right? So like, again, I'll go back to the internet leads. If you get 500 internet leads, most dealerships would say they aren't doing long-term follow-up correctly, right? They're not responding fast enough. They're not giving the personalized touch. And that's just with 500 internet leads. For service, remember, they're going to have 60x the volume, and that person is going to own the car for 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And so every year they got to reach out to those consumers several times. So the scale in which the outreach is needed isn't there. And then you have other things like, like think about Their service scheduling, like that's a huge point of friction. So I don't know if you've serviced your
Yeah,
car like a regular
very
consumer,
familiar.
but if you look at any of like, there's only two ways to schedule service right now, right? You call the dealership and you schedule service, or you go online to their website and you go through the service scheduler. So I'm going to ask you a question. Do you know what the abandonment rate, so the people that start out trying to schedule their car on their service scheduler, what percentage defect or abandon it before completing it on average?
I'm gonna guess like 75%.
Yeah, it's like 81%.
Oh wow, look
Right.
at that.
So about an 81%.
I swear, by the way, that was a total. I was gonna say 90, but I was like, it's probably too high. So let's go
Yeah.
75.
But isn't that crazy? Like out of all
Well, it makes sense because I've tested those service schedulers, the online ones, and they're not friendly. They don't list all the work you need, or it's like, misclassified and it's coded like within a DMS, right?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
have like, like lube oil filter, but it says like LOF. It's like, the hell, I'm a customer. I don't know
Yeah,
what the
yeah.
LOF is. You know what I mean? So it's just it's not user friendly at all.
Yeah, but and here's the problem, right? Like most people in the dealer world, in the automotive world, like that's their language, so they can't put themselves in the consumer's shoes. And also, the average number of clicks to schedule service is like 21 clicks. And if you've ever known the adage of like form fills, is like every single additional field that you have drops the conversion by 50%. And so like you have this huge drop off rate in service. So look, you go in, you schedule service. All the marketing that goes out there is to convince them to either call you or schedule service online. So even if the piece of marketing that you're doing works, 80% is ineffective because the person can't figure out what to do on the service scheduler. So you know what they do? Like half of them end up going to Jiffy Lube down the street, right? Because it's like 15 minutes, don't get out of your car, oil change. Or they call you, but then like 45% of calls are not answered. And if the calls are unanswered, like 60% of the voicemails are unreturned. So you have all these points of defection that exist.
And so fixed ops is the quick win, or fastest ROI, I should say.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Talk to me now if you were to open a new point in, middle of nowhere, you open a new point. Are you implementing an AI tool or are you not? And if you are, which AI tool? And I think this appeals more to the, maybe call it the younger dealer, or the dealer that doesn't have such a, wide book of business yet or is growing. What's your thought?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, mainly, it's mainly going to be variable, right? Because they don't have a huge database of people who have purchased cars for them. Though fix is still important, because if you sell a car, you want to make sure you retain that customer right off the bat. And it's not all about winning back abandoned customers. But on the variable side, there's still huge value in AI, not only for responding to leads faster and doing the long-term follow-up and all those types of things, but it's really about making your staff a lot more efficient and productive in their day-to-day responsibilities. So right now, if you sit behind a sales rep or a BD agent or an internet manager and you just watch what they do on a computer, most of it is like checking off the box of the CRM activity tracking requirements, right? They're like painting by number. They're not even thinking anymore, because it's like, hey, Yossi, here's the email that you write and you send on day 2. And by the way, we've pre-written it out for you because we don't trust you to write your own email, right? Here's the template that eLead has, or Dealer Socket, or whatever it might be. And so there's huge value in AI to deliver amazing experiences on the variable side. Like that's the only way you compete, right? A Ford dealership from Ford 1 to Ford 2, they're all selling the same, Ford Explorer. It's a commodity. It's the same exact thing. You can compete on price, which is happening right now, but like you need to compete on amazing experiences. That's why people go to great hotels. Like you spend an extravagant amount to go to a good hotel. It's because the experience they give you is 20x better than the standard kind of hotel you might frequent. And it's the same thing. So you can use AI, like not only to answer questions, but to deliver this amazing experience, because the customer is submitting leads at 7 to 9 dealerships. They're all answering the same way. And if you, Yossi, have a dealership and you can answer in this amazing way where you can reference and you can contextual and understand deeply what the customer is asking and answer instantly, and not only on the first lead submission, but every time the customer is willing to engage with you, you have the ability to engage back in real time, sustain in a sustained way through that whole kind of purchase cycle. That's huge. So customer experience on the variable side is the number one factor.
So my next question here is, if I took your phone or your email and I took like the last 100 client communications or, messages you have, and I ran them through AI, right? And I said, summarize this, give me like a couple bullet points. Like, what are people asking you? Like, what is the demand? What is the market demanding that we don't know? Right? What are we about to see next year?
Yeah, I think so. I'll look trailing 90 days, what we're starting to see this momentum, this kind of shift is a lot of groups are trying to figure out how to send a lot less messages to their consumers. Like that's by and large.
Oh, fewer messages.
Yeah. I think every dealership knows innately that there's over messaging their customer. I don't think any dealership be like, no, I don't think I'm sending enough messages. So what's happening is they're sending so many messages. Some are good, right? But a lot are bad messages, not personalized, not contextual, not timely, all that type of stuff. And so what's happening is all the bad messages are drowning out the good messages. So now the good messages are becoming ineffective.
Dude.
So it's this consolidation of messages. And by extension, by definition, consolidating all the messages means you're consolidating vendors, right? Like, which is why some people are thinking about going to a CDP. I want to collect all this data on Yossi so that my marketing is more personalized. Like that's like a very simplified view of CDP, but essentially that's what it is. And so the same thing is happening with vendors and tech and their tech stack is, can we consolidate? Like, why do I need 29 different vendors to be messaging my customer? Can't one do it or can't two do it? And so there's this shift in a lot of dealership groups looking for a solution that can enable them to do just that.
You bring up an extremely important point. So I had this conversation on the podcast a couple months ago, and we were talking with a consultant that's consulting for a couple OEMs, and he mystery shopped a dealer, Florida, and he received like 10 follow-ups from that dealer.
Yeah.
Like something crazy. And I had a bunch of dealers reach out to me after that who watched the segment, and one specifically said, Yossi, he said, look, I get it, but also, the manufacturer is mandating that I use, all these different products. And so there's this friction, and I'm not completely taking the blame and accountability away from the dealer, right? Because you still own that product. You can control the messaging to a certain extent, but there still has to be, it needs to be a, symbiotic relationship between the manufacturer, the vendor, the dealer. Have you run into that type of issue where it's just manufacturer mandated tools that are, causing too much noise and without much signal? I fully agree, by the way, with your idea of fewer messaging, because you're right. The more you say, the less people hear. And that's a problem, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that probably happens more so on the fixed side. There's a lot of OEM programs that you have to market. Consumers are much less so on the variable side. Now, on the variable side, you have the first quality response and things like that the OEMs mandate that you have to, stuff things in their response. That may not necessarily be great for the consumer experience, but we find that much less so being an impact on the variable side. So we still think on the variable side, you can send a lot less message. We hear some dealerships say, I have a 6-month follow-up process in place in my CRM. I'm like, somebody submits a lead for you today, you're still following up in 6 months are you still in the market? That's probably not a great experience. And probably all sorts of stuff happen that the dealership doesn't realize. Like the open rates from all the CRMs is like 19%. So like the emails don't even get delivered, right? So there's huge issues, there's huge implications outside of what the dealership realizes. But yes, in terms of there's some overlap on fixed. I don't know if that's ever going to be solved. I think you're going to have to be able to live with
Well, it has to be solved though, right? Like I see it as if it's not solved, this industry will continue losing market share to, the Carvanas and the CarMaxes who are working with a unified system. Like these points, I just think that it's going to be challenging for point solutions to survive over time in the age of AI. And what I mean by point solutions, I mean like bolt-ons, right? When you have one product that does one thing, I just think that the industry will have to consolidate and one system doing, many, many different things, because no matter how inefficient it is at the dealership, if it doesn't impact the consumer, you can live with it. You're just running a more inefficient operation. But the second that you just said, the customer is getting all these different messages, now you're harming the customer experience. Why will I want to do business with you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the difficult parts at least for dealership groups, and you mentioned Tesla and I think Carvana or CarMax is like, that's the brand. I mean, they sell used cars, but that's the brand is like, they can do that. But like, if you own Nissan and a Mercedes-Benz dealership, a CDJR dealership, and a VW dealership, like it's essentially like owning 5 totally different brands. It's like owning a Burger King, a Wendy's, and like a Dunkin' Donuts. So I think it's going to be hard at least in the near or medium term to have everything be homogenized in terms of systems and processes. So that's where I'm saying it's going to be really difficult, but it doesn't mean that you can reduce stuff to allow it to be a lot more effective. And that's where AI is helping a lot of dealerships, is it's helping them send a lot less messages. And by the way, the messages end up being a lot more tailored, a lot more personalized, a lot more contextual. But really, like I mentioned, service is where the overlap is. Like the problem with service too is like all the communications right now is marketing driven. So it's all one way. Like you could have the best CDP in the world. Now you could have like, you could spend millions of dollars on a CDP, and I could have you, Yossi, know exactly what you want, when you want it, send you the right message at the right time, etc. But you can't even respond to that message, right? Because it's all marketing driven, right? It's an ad on the Google Display Network. It's an ad on Facebook. It's an OTT advertisement, right? It's a piece of direct mail. It's, again, super tailored, super personalized, but the onus is on you to have to take action. You can't just get a message and reply to it and say, yeah, when can you bring my car in? So we think that's a huge missing element right now, is like this need for two-way. Consumers are used to now, like Chat GPT. They're used to like instant gratification, instant communication. They can get the information like that. Dealerships have to provide that type of experience for service, or else they're going to keep losing out to Jiffy Lubes and Pet Boys and whoever else might be in the market. Mm-hmm. Oh, and by the way, Yossi, like everything we just mentioned, these like point solutions and over messaging customers and all these different programs that dealerships are using and investing in a CDP, that's exactly how we help dealerships. And that's why we have so many groups using the AI platforms. It allows them to unify the customer experience and unify and coordinate all messaging across variable and fixed. And I think that's been a huge missing component, is that everything along that customer life cycle, from when he enters the market to when he buys a car to when he services a car, is way too balkanized, right? There's way too many vendors with their hands in the cookie jar. The experience is subpar. It's extremely costly for the dealership, and nothing is really tethered and unified. And so that's how we help dealer unify all the messaging and unify all the communications. So the experience is great, the cost is lower, and the outcome is much better.
This episode is brought to you by Experian Automotive. Like most Car Dealership Guy listeners, you're constantly looking for the inside edge on the auto industry. So if you're ready to step up your game to the next level, outpacing the competition and building customer loyalty, there's only one place to go from here. Enter Experian Automotive. Whether you're tracking market share, boosting service revenue, targeting the right buyers, or making smarter inventory decisions, Experian has you covered. They're the only ones with exclusive data across vehicles, consumers, and credit, plus expert data scientists who connect the dots to uncover the insights you need. And their insights aren't just for dealer operators. OEM, lender, agency, whatever your role, Experian's powerful tools help you win. Get industry-leading insights you need from Experian Automotive today. Learn more by visiting Experian.com or clicking the link in the show notes below.
How well do you work across brands?
In terms of cross brands, I mean, it's pretty fluid. Now we have the platform as this agentic capability, which means, for instance, on the variable side, the dealership has control around how the AI might answer specific lead sources, or even more importantly, sub-sources. So for instance, for the first quality response, if CDJR wants something or needs something inculcated in the first response and Nissan has something else, the AI is complete, the dealership has complete control on how the AI is going to answer that first quality response. So they have a lot of flexibility and malleability in terms of how they want the AI to respond, but it's also going to meet all the OEM requirements, which I think is really important if you're a group that owns multiple brands.
Okay, so slightly shifting topic, but I always like to think about like second and third order effects with these things, because there's a lot of investment going into it. Dealers are adopting it. Dealers are asking about it. I see in our CDG 20 group, it's a conversation every single week, whether it be this tool, that tool, this new product. And then I think about, so I mentioned second order effects. I think about Ozempic, right? Bear with me here. But Ozempic didn't come out as a weight loss drug, right? It was a diabetes, like type 2 diabetes drug. And today it's like a serious, massively popular weight loss drug. And I was reading about this over the weekend, hence why it's top of mind. So then I think about, what are the second order effects here, right? Again, as someone who has their pulse on the impact of this technology in our industry, are you witnessing yet any second order effects? Are you seeing anything there that the market should know? What should we know?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are. I think we'll sense them a lot more. And by the way, my light went off, of course, but it'll turn back.
It's okay.
I think
we like it when your room's intimate. It's nice,
That's right. I think we're gonna start seeing kind of those second / tertiary, like third order effects probably in the next year and 18 months. But yeah, I think there's a lot of it around, especially as agentic AI kind of rolls out. I think there's going to be a lot of applications that people can't even think about it now. Because these models, right?
Yes.
Think about these large language models. They're not improving at like 10% or 20%, right? There's no incremental improvement. The next model they roll out has like a 10, 20x increase in capabilities on what that model is released for. And so right now, even with this agentic AI, I mean, think about the application used for the AI being able to mimic your screen and do actions on your behalf, right? So think about like inputting information in the CRM. Sales reps will never be good at inputting information in the CRM. Our sales rep, we think we have a great sales team. We're obviously subjective. Like they're still not that great at inputting information in Salesforce, right? But imagine AI being able to grab all the information and plug it in exactly where it needs to be in real time, right? Now that's a very, very simple use case, but like you look down 12 months, the capabilities that AI will enable you is probably right now unfathomable. And so there's going to have a lot of huge applications in terms of real-time usage and, bookings, cleanliness of the CRM, usage of the DMS, usage of service scheduling, vehicle acquisition that I think is going to change the way that dealerships do business, even more so than it has in the last 2 years.
Okay, so 2 follow-up questions here on customers and information. Do you see AI enhancing CDPs or replacing CDPs or something else? For anyone who's not familiar, right, we have people with all different experiences listening. When I say CDP, I'm just referring to a platform that houses customer data, your customer data that is not your CRM, and uses, cleans that data, right? Makes it better so you can send more targeted messaging to your customer so that Sally, who has 3 kids, that, your system knows that, as opposed to the system thinking that Sally's name is Jim and that she has no kids and she may need, a convertible for the summer. That's like the basics of what I'm saying. Does AI kill that? Does it enhance that or something else?
I think right now it doesn't kill it, right? Because AI can go in, fetch a lot of information very quickly from a lot of disparate systems, right? Which is essentially what the CDP does. I think what the CDP does is you're right, is it just collects all the information on you, the consumer, so that you can make better, faster decisions. I think right now what AI will do, and the way that we think about AI, so think about, you have a CDP platform, but AI is really going to be a communication platform, not just communication the way you think of ChatGPT. It can do all the synthesizing, it can understand data, so it can grab all that data that's in the CDP and make a lot better decisions. And then the last mile being the communication, it can actually communicate a lot more effectively. And then really like the last kind of like link in the chain is the execution of the action. So meaning you have your CDP, which is all the data on a consumer, which allows you to be a lot smarter. And then you have AI that's grabbing that data, figuring out, predictively figure out what to do next with that data, communicating with you, Yossi, the consumer, and then say if it's service scheduling, going in and booking your service at the dealership completely frictionless. So right now, I think it's additive, right? So think about the layer of CDP, and then you bolt on this massive AI application that can use all that data to actually drive an outcome. But who knows? Maybe over time, the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, this AI engine essentially becomes the brain, essentially becomes the CDP.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question now, which is today, right? September 2025. What dealers are CDPs for every dealer? This is another conversation I had. Like some dealers, text. I'm like, hey, what do you think? Like, hey, I don't have a CDP. Another one is like, I love it. I use my CDP. It's like my, top of mind. It's the best thing since sliced bread. Is a CDP for every dealer in September 2025? Or if not, who is it for? What's your take on that?
No, yeah. I mean, look, you need to be of enough size for it to make sense. It's not a light investment. It's not easy. And when they implement a CDP, it takes like a year to do it right. Maybe you could do a little bit faster, but generally it's going to take a year. And it's super costly. So if you're a single point store, even if you have 2, 3, 4, 5 stores, like, is it worth it to invest in this CDP? Like, if you got to spend, let's say $1 million, like that's just cash. Like how many cars do you have to sell to recoup that $1 million? That's a lot of cars sold, right? On a triple net basis. And so I think you need to be of enough size. I mean, if you said, Art, like what's the dealership group size that what's the acceptable threshold? I don't know. It's also based on the total customer database that you have. But, I would say if you're a 15 plus store group, it's probably worth looking into. But you could still do a lot. You could still do a lot better with all the data that already exists in your CRM and in your DMS without investing heavily into a CDP. right? You can extract a lot more efficiencies, a lot better outcomes with all the data in those two systems to move the needle.
Mm-hmm. And just to clarify, when you say $1 million, 50+ store, you're referring to a custom CDP or an off-the-shelf CDP? You're referring to custom only.
Yeah, custom. I mean, they're still expensive if it's off the shelf, right? I mean, you look at like the monthly recurring fees, the setup fees, then you factor in the amount of mind share and human capital that you need to throw at it to make it work. And that's if then you make it work.
Oh, okay, got it. So you're looking at it kind of fully loaded. Understood.
Yeah. I mean, it's generally expensive. Now it works if you have a ton of records, right? Because that means like the more records you have, the
More
less
value.
cost per record it ends up being. That's the unit economics work out. But look, like if you think about even with a CRM and a DMS, say you just had a CRM, the dealership doesn't even use all the data that's at their fingertips in the CRM, right? So the same issues exist if you have a CDP and you don't use it correctly, or you don't have the staff or the infrastructure, which is you have more data that's more organized, but like you're still not using it to the degree that you should. So I there's a lot of groups that are setting aside a CDP and using AI in lieu of a CDP, right? Because it's faster, it's cleaner, and you don't need to make that capital investment. So
that's a very good insight, and I'm sure some of the people I spoke with will listen to this, and they will, that'll be helpful for them. So, Art, before we wrap up, voice AI feels like it's the next frontier in the AI game, and don't get me wrong, it's already very well deployed in many dealerships, but nonetheless it's growing quickly from my anecdotal feel.
Yeah.
How do you feel about voice AI? Where are we at?
I think that's going to be a super important part of how dealerships think about deploying AI and like a use case for an AI application. I think right now, for at least for the first 9 months, like we don't feel right now like these large language models, right? Because everybody uses the same thing, right? So think about OpenAI, think about Anthropic, think about Bard, etc. Like all those large language models are powering almost everything. The problem with voice right now is we feel some dealerships might get burnt right now is the way that they're thinking about voice, like true voice, right? You call, like when people say voice AI, they're thinking I'm calling and then I'm going to talk to an AI and they're going to like help me out, right? And it's going to be a great experience. And I always tell dealerships, it says like, yes, I think that's going to come. I don't think it's ready now because what's really difficult is two things. One is, for instance, if you're talking to an AI, Yossi, it's really hard for the AI to understand when you're done speaking, right? That small, like imperceptible second that happens where the AI is processing. Because when they ingest voice, they're taking in voice, they're transcribing it in the text, they then retranscribe it in the voice and then push it back out. There's latency to that. But that is like, even if it's 0.3 seconds, the consumer picks it up that it's a bot, right? And then they're circumvented. It's not a great experience. Or oftentimes the AI, because of the integration, the ecosystem that don't exist, can't answer your question. So I call you for service and I go, hey, is my car ready for service? Or is my car ready? I dropped it off 2 days ago. It's still got to hand you off to a person, right? So it's like, again, another layer that doesn't get me to the outcome I want. I still have to speak to the person. I still have to be on hold. But then in addition, I have to talk to an AI agent. So the way that we're thinking about it right now, a much better way is using that transcription. So, like for instance, let a phone call come in, let AI transcribe it, ideally move it to text, right? I'm speaking fixed right now, but ideally the phone call comes in, try to push that conversation to text. So Yossi, you call in to bring your car in. It says, hey Yossi, do you want us to just text you and just carry this conversation over text? That's how Delta does it. You call Delta and they say, press 1 or say yes and we'll text you. And they're moving like 38% of calls into text. And with text, you have a lot more control.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And it solves this whole problem because with text, you can control it. You can book them. You don't have this thing that exists right now with latency. And then you also have this secondary problem of like ambient noise. So you're calling, you're in a mall, you're at the airport, like there's noise around, it picks up the noise and it says, I'm sorry, I couldn't pick up what you were saying. Like that's super frustrating. Like I don't care how good the AI is, that's going to be an issue that you run into. So you move them to text and then you can book them via text. You can communicate via text, for instance, but two things happen. One, they don't have to call you back because they've created a habit that they can get business done via text. And two, your staff doesn't have to call the consumer back because you have a texting dialogue going. Like, for instance, would you rather call a restaurant to book a reservation or text them if they had a texting service to book it? You would never call them in your life.
Makes sense.
So anyway,
I haven't thought about that. That's a great insight. All right, so Art, as we're wrapping up here, For the dealers listening, whether it be the 30 store group, the two store dealer, they're thinking about AI, they're thinking about their group, they want to grow sales, they want to be more efficient, they're thinking about the next year. Just like sum this up for us, right? Give us your couple pieces of advice. What should they be doing, right? What is the right thing, in your opinion, that they should be looking into, deploying, thinking about in, again, September 2025? What's your take?
Yeah, I think there's three easy things. Is they always look at the consumer experience. So for instance, go to your website. Does your chat provider give you a great customer experience, right? Like go in and ask some of the most simple questions in the chat that you have, which is generally the first experience the customer has with the dealership is chat, right? Unless they call you or walk in. And see if you're delivering great customer experience. On the variable side, like think about, do you have a BDC, an internet team? Like, do they have the close rates that you want? Most will say no. Has it changed in the last 2 to 3 years with all the changes you've implemented? Probably negligibly. So it's like, I would think as a dealer, are there AI applications that can help me solve some of the stuff on the variable that hasn't changed, right? Response time, follow-up, customer experience, appointment booking, half the leads come at night. So are consumers being, neglected for 12, 13 hours. And then really, I think the most, like I said at the beginning of this podcast, but I think the biggest opportunity is service. And I think if dealerships are looking, most do not want to spend any more money than they're currently spending, right? Like they're trying to tighten their belts. So it's, can you do more with less, right? And where is the money? The money is not in the CRM. The money's in the DMS. And if you look at it, it's like, how are you going to get more people to service from you? Do the exact same thing you've been doing for the last.
Why did you say that? The money's not in the CRM, it's in the DMS. Why did you say that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at somebody that gets 350 leads a month, okay, they probably have 20,000 records in the DMS. All right. So that is 20,000 people, in which the average RO is $460, in which, by the way, 55% of a dealership's DMS are people who haven't been in 12 months plus. And if you think about service, I'm going to simplify it. Some groups are going to say that's not the truth. But like if you think about service, the reason they went elsewhere is not because of price. You go to the average consumer and you ask them what the price of an oil change is at Jiffy Lube versus the dealership, they would not be able to tell you. The reason they go somewhere else is out of convenience. There's 190,000 independent repair shops in the US. There's like 36,000 franchise dealerships. So like they're already at disadvantage. So you got to provide a better experience. And AI can do just that for Fix. It can simplify the outreach, the communication, and more importantly, it can simplify the service scheduling so that you could be a lot more convenient than Jiffy Lube is.
Art, Dessein, Impel, Art, this was incredible. And by the way, the last thing you just said, I was looking to the side because I was writing it down. I love that. That's a very good quote. I might have to use that one. Money's not in the CRM, it's in DMS, and it makes total sense when you think about it. So we're so focused on the new, but what about the old, which is just as new? We just, it's just not as shiny, but it's there and it's valuable.
It's sexier to sell a new thing than it is to retain something. So it's it's human behavior, but
so true.
AI doesn't have human tendencies.
Art, Dessein, Impel. Art, thanks so much for joining. This was amazing.
Yossi, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.